Hi everyone, Gamma here. Sorry that this video is going to be coming out pretty late. It's about 11 o'clock now when I'm filming, and I'm sort of expecting my insomnia to sort of be a bit of an issue tonight. So I'm probably going to have this uploaded tonight. So I reckon that by the time you do see this, it will probably be, you'll see it in the morning and end up watching it tomorrow. So so there isn't really ended up being content on the Wednesday, but hopefully you get to enjoy this on the Thursday. I didn't stream today. I will be on Saturday. I've been, since I got my computer, exploring a lot of nostalgia, and I found a game or two that I really want to revisit and, sort of share that experience of reliving some of those memories on stream. So I'll probably be doing that on Saturday. I'll end up posting about it. So, but I didn't feel like I was in the best headspace to stream. I feel like when I do videos, that's sort of when I talk about things that are more serious and I promote certain ideas, or I just sort of generally discuss my thoughts, and then on stream I'm bringing that sort of more positive, casual energy, so that if anyone comes along and wants to have a discussion, then we're in a slightly more upbeat environment and we can handle things in a slightly easier way. I think in a collective it's probably better to have that sort of upbeat mood, and then I can be serious in front of the camera when it's not live. And we, sort of after today, it felt like it made a bit more sense to have a more serious camera session rather than going on stream. I think I've made it clear throughout the videos that I've made that, how seriously I take the threat of COVID. I think after such a long time of, being stuck in quarantine and not being able to do many of the things that I used to enjoy doing, I empathise with people who are at their wits' end and really want to get out of this, and I understand the extreme toll that this is going to take on people's mental health, or already has. I talk about some of the, I don't want to say incidental, because I think that sort of carries connotations of being less severe, but we'll say it's not much better, but we'll say secondary deaths due to COVID, and I say that with in relation to delays to cancer, but I think that the impact on mental health and the subsequent actions that people may take from that, I think, is something that we should pay attention to, and I think most people do a good job of it. However, I think today it's put into perspective just how much more serious it is, and how we're at this point in the process of battling COVID where we need to double down on that conviction of keeping each other safe, even to the expense of, even at personal expense of dealing with being stuck inside for a bit longer, maybe going a little bit crazy. Or I say crazy, that kind of sounds demeaning to some of the issues that people face when they're stuck in quarantine. I feel like I'm going mad, but for some people that kind of puts it in a jovial sense. I'm doing okay inside at the moment, like as in physically being stuck inside. I feel like I'm doing okay with that, but I know for a lot of people that simply isn't doing that. That's not doing any good for them at the moment. I feel like I'm rambling, but I'm just trying to set the context of, I think today has really put into perspective just the impact that this pandemic can have on us individually. I remember when I was first diagnosed with cancer, so I went for my ultrasound and I was at the hospital, and it came back, it flagged that something was wrong. It wasn't a benign lump as we were previously led to believe. So when we were still outside the hospital waiting to be picked up, I was with my mum, and I remember her saying, "These things don't happen to us," and it's a quote that it stands out to me because it really puts into perspective the mindset that people have before they're affected by serious illness. And it's not one I criticise, that doesn't come from a critical perspective. It makes complete sense, and it really helps me understand sort of the uphill battle a lot of people face when it comes to changing perceptions around certain difficult topics, you know, wanting to bring people into that conversation and making people understand. And I think to an extent, I was in that same position up until recently of COVID is a terrible thing, but as long as we take the necessary precautions, nothing's going to happen to us. Even when I had my scare recently and I had to get tests and they came back negative, it was still one of those situations where I was thinking, we're going to be fine. Nothing's going to happen, you know, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. That was the mindset I had. However, I've been proven wrong. And today was difficult because my mum was admitted into hospital with COVID. I've known that she's had it for a couple of days, and at first we were quite cautious but optimistic. We still are. Everything's okay. Everything's going to be okay. But I've had to do a lot of thinking today whilst she was in the hospital. So as COVID patients tend to do, you start off moderately ill, and sometimes it progresses and gets worse, and you have to be admitted to make sure that you don't sort of progress into that illness any further, and they get you up to, I say, fighting speed, or they give you supplemental oxygen, or they not intubate, but so I came into this. I'm a bit scattered at the moment. I usually script a lot of my videos, but I just wanted to come on and just talk about sort of how I'm feeling. You go in out of fear, I think, to a degree, but yeah. So my mum, who's a carer, their care home managed to keep COVID out for quite a lot of time, and I really don't think that healthcare workers, you know, those who look after the elderly or the infirm, have got nearly the credit they deserve throughout this entire pandemic. I've seen my mum sort of forfeit personal time, holiday, to make sure that they're adequately staffed. She sees a lot while she's in there. You care for people in the twilight of their lives, and that in of itself carries, you know, you're subject to a lot of beautiful moments and that great sort of interpersonal connection, but you see some pretty harrowing things, and COVID only exacerbates those terrible things. Plenty of the elderly, as more vulnerable to COVID, have died, and the way that this care home works is it spread, wildfire's the only way of putting it, it spreads through there pretty rampantly, and many of the people at my mum's care home have been infected, and that includes my mum, who started off as, she, you know, we were talking and she was feeling a bit groggy. At first she was pretty adamant she had the flu, but she wasn't satisfied with that as a conclusion in the same way that I was, because in a COVID environment, especially in the circumstance she's in, where she's going into a care home daily almost, it didn't seem like a satisfying conclusion for it to be flu, especially when she's in the sort of thick of it. And she was okay at first, and her main concerns were a sort of growing tightness in her chest and an increase in fatigue, which eventually got worse, and her oxygen levels began to decrease in the same, her oxygen saturation levels, decreased in the same ways that mine did when I was anemic going through chemo. I've noticed there's a lot of parallels, weirdly, today. And she began vomiting, so my dad took her to the hospital and she had to be admitted. And she's okay now, she's back home, but I really think it's been quite a shock to the system, understanding that how pertinent this threat is. And I don't, the battle that a lot of people face in talking about cancer is getting people to be willing to have a conversation and be at least open to changing their perception. I don't think we have the luxury of time with that battle when it comes to COVID. I think everyone really needs to understand, well, 6 months ago, what pertinent threat it is, and how, especially now, I know it's at this hardest point where we're in the second year of this pandemic, or we're fast approaching it. We can't afford to let up on following restriction guidelines and making sure that we're conscious of the safety of others. I think the thing that's been most difficult about it has been the fact that I've not been able to be there in person to help. So my dad's been calling me pretty regularly to give me updates on, when he took mum, what tests they were waiting for when, bringing her home. I only got to speak to her very briefly, but she couldn't remember our conversation when I spoke to her again later in the evening. And it's after what we experienced together when I was ill, she gave up weeks of her time just to sit there with me when I felt like crap, or spending those days staying at the cotton rooms, the outpatient sort of hotel for people coming in for their treatment at my treatment centre. She had to stay there away from her husband and her other 2 children so that I could go and receive that treatment. Not that she ever questioned it. She did it without thinking. She'd do it for anyone in a heartbeat. And I've done what I can to help. I picked up a couple of medications. I got some food for everyone because naturally my whole house is quarantined. But it really sucks not being able to be there in person. And that's something that has been on my mind today. And I think it's that thought that's been leading sort of the internal discussion I've been having today. And it's not one that's reached its conclusion yet, and that's probably why I feel this whole video will probably be very scattered. But yeah, I think guilt is the main theme of what I've been feeling today, and wishing that I could even begin to repay what was done for me. It's just wild, isn't it, to think that you can't be there for your family when they when you would want to be there to make sure that they're okay. I've not seen most of my family for such a long time now. So I think I'm not even entirely sure what the point is. I think the point is that I was perhaps still carrying a level of naivety about the whole outbreak that I didn't realise I was still carrying. I thought I had a pretty good understanding of the situation, but I didn't realise just how ill it makes you. So I think with the carrying into the future, we just need to band together and just keep working at it. And the way things are going, they reckon all adults vaccinated by September. I really hope so. I really you think about all the things we used to go and do before, like just going shopping or going and sitting in a restaurant and going on holiday, all these things that I look forward to when I was ill, and never. It's a stark reality, really. I mean, for me, technically, I'm moving into my 3rd year of this sort of isolation, and not only is that my late teens, early 20s that are sort of being absorbed by sickness in like a general sense, but I think the little voice in the back of my head is always going, well, how many years have we got? And how many are being siphoned? That's something that I think about a lot. It's making sure that I safeguard my decisions now, because like any long-term decisions, because I need to keep in mind that that's the question that's always there, is how many years are there? And I think that level of uncertainty is something that we should always keep in mind, not to drive us to depression or to behave impulsively, but to keep us conscientious of others and know that we wouldn't want to rob anyone else of their uncertain level of time either, I suppose. I think there's a message there. I mostly just wanted to share how I'm feeling, and I didn't want to be completely absent from the routine, so I just thought I wanted to share where I was, and hopefully there's something to extrapolate there, and perhaps not entertainment, but something to think about, and hopefully there's something that you gain from it. I'll be back on Saturday with a more structured video, the next Chronicle, and a stream, so it will all be back to normal, hopefully. And yeah, I guess just follow Instagram if you want some more updates, really. Yeah, thank you everyone. Yeah, I'll see you all soon.